everybody, this is Josh Noble from Blue Prism. So I've been writing a series of posts about how to use Blue Prism for both on desktop attended automation and then off desktop attended automation. In several of those posts, we've been using an example of this very simple Notepad test process, and then this new advanced Notepad test process that has human interaction, pop-ups, dialog boxes going on. So just wanted to walk through a couple of scenarios here. So first off, showed how to set up desktop icons for triggering desktop automations or triggering off desktop attended automations. So the robot doesn't necessarily have to live on the desktop with you; it can live on its own machine, but we can use these little triggers to trigger either one of those scenarios. In this case, I have what I call my bad bot demo where I'm going to trigger my Notepad test process to start putting a notepad up on my screen here, sharing a desktop with me. And I'm going to click this a few times. Now, as we do this, usually we wouldn't see this screen running right here, but I did elect to have my local resource show you what it was doing and what communication was going across the network. And then also here you're seeing the Blue Prism control room, and this is based out in AWS. And so actually as we've been doing this, and I've clicked this a few times, we have these various different notepads that have popped up on the screen. It throws in this hello world and starts it hello world 0 and starts counting up every 5 seconds to a new number. What's funny is kind of the premise with desktop automation is that I can start interacting with these robots as we're fighting for command and control over these screens. Now I could put something like a foreground locker in place and block this type of activity from happening. But this is how it's going to work by default. The other thing that's kind of interesting in this scenario is, let's say I start closing these down. That's now going to be reflected over in AWS, that we're going to see terminated processes begin to come across. And so just for sake of time, I'm going to close all of these out. We've seen kind of our bad bot termination or notepad process. The other thing that's worth noting is, as we've gone through the series of last couple articles, I've shown how to start to add things more like human dialogue boxes, both for pop-ups and collecting information from a human if we're on an on desktop attended scenario. And I showed a shortcut for if you didn't have a kind of invisible resource that I have triggered setting running up on my desktop, how to set one of those up very easily from the system tab within the Blue Prism control room, especially if you're in like a learning edition version of the software where you have access to everything. When that happens, I can actually go and instead of running processes triggered directly from the desktop, I can drag and drop a process over onto my local desktop resource. The difference being is you see that queued up here, so I do need to start that process. And again, this is going to now actually push that process out to begin on my desktop. But let's look at this, how a user might typically interact with this. So I'm going to cancel that out. And again, I have, instead of my kind of bad bot icon here, I have my Hello World Notepad helper icon. Again, I'm going to leave this up on the screen so you can see the network traffic going back and forth between my local machine and AWS, where the logs are being stored, the latest version of the process is being pulled from. And here we'll see, to begin with, I'm asking for a starting number. Instead of our standard Notepad process is just going to start at Hello World 0, whatever number I've put into this is where my starting number for Hello World 15 is going to start at this point. Now, nice thing about this as well is this is a standard Windows form, so anybody with Windows 10 is going to have access to this type of form. And in Blue Prism, I have just changed the styling around. So you'll notice this one is a little kind of jumbo on the screen so that it works for this type of recording. But you could change this to be styled with different fonts, colors, different shapes and sizes. You'll see some of that different on the next screen. So I'm going to start with the number 15 for my Hello World process. And my next pop-up that comes up on the screen that we showed how to integrate in and how to build is this note that says hands off the keyboard human. And I'm going to click OK on that. Again, this is styled very, very different than that last one. But then it's going to now bring up my notepad on the screen and that local runtime resource, that local robot is going to start with my hello world 15 entry. Now, of course, this isn't an overly helpful actual business process, but you can see where you can start to integrate these back and forth interactions for a RDA deployment where you do need to have those dialogue going back and forth. The other thing we'll notice here is that because those pop-ups occurred, you knew that if we had applied those to something like that bad bot process, I wouldn't have had so many screens popping up unless I had actually elected for that to happen and clicked through and threw a number in and clicked OK. So again, this is counting up, but again, with the oddity of desktop automation, it is going to go and rewrite over what I'm working on, and so I am fighting back and forth control here. Again, I could put a key lock, a key lock in front of this, but then either I'm using the runtime resource or my machine, or the robot is using my machine. So neither one of us being overly productive in that scenario. The other thing that happens is if I were to, again, click that out and go to back to the control room, we'll see that that process will be terminated. So hopefully that demonstrates live some of the things that you've seen over the last couple posts. Keep watching, keep following. Look forward to sharing more.